Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we're going to be looking at something very specific. What we're going to try and do today is easy mode animate characters. So what we're going to do is really quickly create characters using a tool called VRoid Studio. Then we're going to bring them into Blender. We'll show you how you could potentially animate them, then export them out to use in your game engine of choice. Today, game engine of choice is going to be Godot. By the way, there is a VRM Importer, that is the native file format here for the Unity game engine. So if you are using Unity, you may be able to skip a step. So first off, we've got VRoid Studio. Now, this is something I've covered a couple of times in the past. It actually was written using Unity itself. It is available for free download at VRoid.com. Once you have that, this is a tool you can use for creating animated anime characters. They come out in VRM format to start with. Now, VRM seems to be derived from GLTF. There is an importer for Blender. What you want to do is go ahead and download this guy and install it. Just basically import the zip that you get. Nothing really hard, just download the add-on right here. I will show you how you bring that zip into Blender and make things work. And then you may be interested specifically in the license. I am reading the VRM licensing details. It seems to be more about for working with their VRoid hub as opposed to the end data. I think the actual licensing of the avatars you create using VRoid are actually up to you. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier on, there is an MIT licensed VRM importer for the Unity game engine. So if you're working with Unity, like I said, you may be able to skip some steps. And one of the cool things you're going to see is updated 4 days ago, updated 2 days ago. So this stuff is very actively supported. All right, so let's go to step one in this equation, and that is VRoid Studio. You can see it in action right here. This is one of the default characters you can start from. I've kind of got it in an animated posed mode. This is what I use to create the thumbnail. You can do all of this directly inside of VRoid Studio. So I just set a background image here. You can see here, it's broken up into various different categories. This works just like if you're doing a character creation in your game. You're coming through, you've got a ton of control over every various different thing. The eyes, you can even get into the details of the texture maps for the eyes. You can upload your own texture maps. You can do your UV mapping. You can paint directly in this tool if you want to tweak things slightly here. So let's go ahead, we'll take a look at the irises, for example. You're going to see there is a texture map defined for it. This guy was created, I believe, in Japanese, so I can't actually tell you what the parameters are over here. But you've got the ability to come in and edit and tweak things to your heart's content, or otherwise you can stick with the easy mode stuff under design and go through. Basically, you create each character part, and you've got a number of slider controls for it over here. As I mentioned earlier on, pretty much easy mode. You can make a pretty good variety of characters. It used to be limited to just one gender. Thankfully, that is not the case anymore. You've also got some control over the expressions on the character's face. You can see how they will work out for you. You have fine-tuned control over the hair. You can create hair on an individual strand-by-strand basis. You can actually start drawing strands of hair in here, or you can have bone control over how that hair is going to interact. Then when you're done with the hair, you switch over to the body. Once again, you've got all the various different pieces of the body. We can do just an overall slider for short and tall, or we can just look at all of them. You can see an idea of just how many things you have control of. So if you want to give this girl, let's say, longer legs, let's go down here. We'll take a look at the legs, and we can create. Oh, I'm doing arms. All right, let's go back to the leg. Where did leg go? Okay, here we go. So we can change the leg length however we wish in either direction. So if we want to make her a little bit shorter, we just accomplished that. So that's how you go through all the various different pieces for the body itself. And again, you have texture control over how all of those things end up looking, various different pieces there. So you can change the base color and the shading color that is being used. There you can see the texture map in action. And then it carries on over to the clothing editor. This one is where you're going to see a bit of a limitation. There are just a small set of base types here. So you can go with the more traditional anime look. Base model will get me demonetized. One piece like so. So you got various different ones you can work there. You can also change the details of that clothing. Now, I don't know if there is an easy way to bring new clothing in here. That is the one area where I'm kind of missing, but you do have accessory options available here. So the head, we can, no, there's nothing for head, nothing for face. neck. All right, there you go. So you can start bringing in accessories, etc. But if you start moving beyond these defaults and you can't get there with texturing, that may be where you run into your first limitation. But for the most part, you can texture and modify and reshape things and reskin them to get a bunch of different looks. I just don't know the specifics about modeling and bringing in your own clothing. I wouldn't be surprised that it's capable of it. I just don't personally know if you can do so. And then we got some general editor, rim lighting, outlines, and so on. And then finally, you get into the exporter side of things. Here is where, for example, you can define a background like I have done here, or you can just set a background color. You can set posing. There are a number of different animations built in here. So, for example, jump, or hurt, or damage, or so on. Then we can get into lighting effects you can control and work on there. And then what you're ultimately going to want to do, but you can also do some things, by the way, for post effects. So you can make a comic look here, put a kind of comic shader on it, or you can have bloom turned on and off. But when you're ready and you're happy with what you've got, you go ahead and do an export. Now, the way this would normally work is you export out to the VRoid hub, and you've connected your thing up, and you can push your avatar out that way. But what we are going to do in this case is a straight out export. You got details here. You can actually have it reduce down the level of detail. So right now we're putting out a 28K polygon 18 material mesh. You can also handle that with the material reduction, so you can have it have a much reduced material count, which can actually make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to Blender. You're going to lose some control over it, but you'll also have a simpler shader account if you set this down. And then once you're actually happy with it, you can export, and you can actually export your ed out as a quad-shaped object mesh as well. So you like your character, you go ahead and do an export out. And yeah, all these settings, sure, we're good to go. You got to give a name and an author, and that's it. So once that is done, we'll go ahead and say C:/temp. I've already got V to export it, so I'll skip out of that. And now we're going to switch over to stage 2. Stage 2 is Blender. You can go from Blender to just about anywhere. So if you can get your model into Blender, you can then go and do whatever you wish. So let's go ahead and delete the sacrificial default cube. And here we are in Blender. What you're going to need to do is going to edit and preferences, install, download that zip file we talked about earlier. This guy right here, click that link right there. It will download a zip file. Install that zip file. Once you have that installed, you're going to have the next catch. You'll probably be under official by default. Switch over to testing. You will find import export VRM Importer available as an option. Go ahead and make sure that that one is enabled. Once you have done so, let's go back over here to Blender. You can go to File, Import, and then VRM should be an option at the bottom. Go ahead and select that. So now what we want to do is make sure that the advanced options are enabled over here. Now, if you exported with simple textures, you probably won't have to do this step. But what I want to do is come down here, and we want to use simple principled material. This will actually create a much simpler shader network for us. If you're using this guy to actually work in Blender, you probably don't want to do this step, but if you want to make it so that your export out to other game engines works a little bit better, simplify this down. It will result in a simpler cycles-based material being created for you. And then finally, go ahead and do the import. So you're going to notice it's a 14 megabyte file, and this can actually take a couple of seconds to import. It's going to look like your Blender has crashed. It hasn't. Just let it run, and it will bring in the character fully textured and ready to go. So let's just give this a second to run. It should be any second now. So yeah, there we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead. We'll switch that over to EV mode so you can see that we have a fully textured model going on here. All right, looking good. Okay, so you can see one thing you'll notice is it's also fully rigged and ready to animate, which we will showcase in a second. It also has a number of colliders. These colliders, from what I can tell, have absolutely no use for us for the world of game development. These seem to be very specific to VRoid Studio, so we're just going to go ahead and we'll get rid of them. I think there was a couple of colliders in the arm. No, okay, we're good to go. So now we just have an armature and 3 mesh pieces, the head, the face, and the body, all separately. What we can actually do is grab all 3 of those guys, like so, hit spacebar, type the words join. All right, so we joined it down together into one single mesh. We have an armature available as well. It simplified the materials for us for sure at this point in time. But what you'll notice is we've got, again, a full rig here. So we can go in here and let's go down to 50. We'll do a really simple animation here, so we'll look pretty straight on like that. Select the armature. It should already be set up right. So we'll just go ahead and go into pose mode. Select all the, so we'll start from a keyframe. That works for me. So we'll do a location and scale rotate. We'll move over to, say, about 10 frames. Grab the arm here, and we'll do that. And then again, we'll grab that keyframe. We'll go to 21. All right, so we'll rotate there. Let's grab that bone there. And then let's keyframe those. And then we'll just grab this one here, like that. And then we'll rotate that Z axis. We're going to do like a queen wave here. Oops, I think I forgot to put my key in there. Oops. All right, let's do that again. There, rotate Z. There. All right, good. So keyframe that. All right, good to go. And then let's go to 40. And again, we'll just go over here, keyframe that, and then we'll go back to 50 and rotate back, and then keyframe that. Okay, so what we've got here is a very simple animation. So, hey people, there we go. So we got a wave in. All this is to show you is that you can get your animations out. So now you've got this character here fully textured, and you want to get it animated out to your application of choice. Like I said, I'm going to use Blender in this case, and probably the easiest way to go about this is to make this guy or gal GLTF. So that's where we started from. That's where we're going to end up with. So GLTF, we're going to go with binary, good to go. I want to make sure that your animations are actually selected. You have the option of just taking the character out or this collection out. I'm going to bring it with everything. That will bring the lighting out as well. So let's go ahead. We're going to do File, we'll export, and we will make that a GLTF model. And of course, that goes into temp. And there's a Blender output. Ooh, I can't spell. Output example. All right, we're good to go. So the default should pretty much work for you with GLTF. You do have a couple of options. You can do a full binary, embedded, separate. I find separate is problematic, so I like to keep all the textures embedded inside of the file for me. That is going to go ahead and export that out. So now we move on to step 3 in this process. Step 3 involves making your game. So here we are creating a new project. Go ahead and create that. Pretty straightforward on the whole, and we're going to go ahead and create a new 3D scene. And now finally, let's just go over, grab that file out of our temp directory. So C:/temp, and it was called Blender output example. We'll dump that in here. We will let Blender do its importing thing. And here we see it's going, and it is done. So there you see it pulled in all of the various different materials. Once again, you could have simplified this material process quite a bit more at the export process. So if we go back over here, you'll notice you do have options to play around with to get, you can drop the texture quality down, and you can reduce the number of textures it generates. This would, again, make your life quite a bit simpler at a point later on. So once you've done that, we can go ahead and okay, so we've got it imported. Let's just go take a look at it. So there is our file. So we'll open it up anyways. Here you see it looking good in Blender. So really simple to bring it over. The question is, did it bring in our animations along with all of the textures and everything else we've got here? And the answer is, of course, yes, it did. Let's go ahead and play it. There's the queen wave. Although I kind of bent her arm in the wrong direction, which is more than a little bit creepy. So let's see that on loop. There we go. So there you can see a fully animated anime character from VRoid Studio through Blender and into your game engine of choice in less than like 10 minutes. It's amazingly powerful software for sure. This whole pipeline works quite well. Again, once you start switching over to other platforms, it does get a little bit more hacky. Now, another thing you may run into is if you want to bring in your animations of choice and you don't want to use their setup, another option you've got is something like Mixamo. So if you head on over to Mixamo, so let's do a new tab. Let's drop out of here. So let's go like so. Mixamo. Mixamo is free-ish. What you can do is I've gone ahead, I've uploaded a character here already, but I can show you this again. So you can upload your own characters in FBX, OBJ, and zip format. I selected one as FBX. I've been playing around with this for a while, so I want to make sure I get the right one here. I think it's this one, Anime Char FBX. And you can go ahead and you can upload these models up to something like Mixamo for doing the work. You could also theoretically do it in something like Make Human or MB Labs if you wanted to work with it. So there you see they've stripped out, so sorry, I stripped out the armature to make this export. So when I was in Blender, let's go on back over here. What you'll need to do is basically get rid of the armature so you're exporting just the mesh. And then you can bring it up here and use the auto rigging tool from them. So here, for example, all you're doing is saying, okay, chin is, it's drag and drop. Chin is there, the wrists are here, the elbows are here, the knees are here, and the groin is there. And you let it basically do its thing. It's symmetrical. You can have the level of detail on the skeleton. So how many fingers, no fingers at all. Let's simplify it. We don't actually, we'll leave the fingers in. We'll let it figure out as best as possible. So we'll go ahead and let the auto rigger do its thing. I forget how long this takes. It says up to 2 minutes. So I'll go ahead and pause while that's happening. And then once it's automatically done, you'll see it plays a default animation. So yeah, we're good with that. Replace our character. So there is our character right there. And now we can start dropping in animations on her if we so wish. So what you can do is drop in, okay, we'll do a belly dance animation here. And there you see the result of that. By the way, you can also have the camera follow right there. All different kinds of animations. Here's where Mixamo really shines. You can drop in these, I don't know why that one didn't work. Let's do Samba instead then. So you can drop in all these various different animations. You can see they actually do a pretty good job on re-rigging and setting up the UVs on the character, including on the clothing, etc. So if you want to have more of a simplified rig, you don't want to go with the default that it works with, it's a relatively simple process to re-rig a character like this in Mixamo. Just do be sure that you erase the existing armature before you upload the mesh up, and then you can have it come back down. Basically, you export the animation as just a raw FBX of the animation, and you'll probably export out the T-pose for that character, rebind the skeleton, and you are good to go. So that is another option you have there. But as you saw, if you're wanting to create your animations from scratch using a tool like Blender, the full armature is here. There is a decent set of bones to work from. You've also got bones here for controlling the hair and the clothing that they're wearing. So if you want that level of detail, that option is there for you. Just a matter of which one you want to choose and go with. But as you can see, we can go from VRoid Studio to Blender to, in this case, the Godot game engine in just a few minutes. Really a powerful tool, especially if this is the art style that you're going for. If you want to populate your world with these kind of characters, it's just simple as heck. A couple things again to point out. I will have links to all of the relevant documents. You do need to use the importer. I would be sure to go through the VRoid licensing. It doesn't seem directly applicable to what we're doing here. It's more seems to be covering their hub, etc. And it also seems that you are ultimately choosing your license there, except if you upload to the VRoid hub. But if there is a licensing condition that I am not aware of, please let me know these things in the comments down below. And then once again, and I did not test it myself, but there is UniVRM. It's a package that can import and export VRM format into Unity game engine. So if Unity is your weapon of choice, you probably want to go that route. Although, in all honesty, you can still do the exact workflow we did. Bring it here into Blender, even keep it as a Blender file if you want, but that ultimately just converts it to an FBX anyways. So this workflow that we saw today, even if you don't use the Unity importer, still will work for your game engine of choice. And theoretically, I'm not sure if Unreal Engine has if it has GLTF support or not, but you should be able to convert it to whatever file format you want there as well. The big thing you're going to want to look at when you do this, play around with it yourself, see what works best for you. You can get into some of the mesh reduction to get a smaller polygon mesh if you want to do it on this side at the creation point instead of at the DCC or Blender side of things. And you also probably want to go ahead and drop the material count down at this point in time, and you can pick the texture resolution right there, so you can bring out with 4K textures into just 2 materials. That would probably simplify your life as well, but just do keep in mind you do have these options available on import, or you can not do that and you can get a much more shader-friendly, cartoony, anime-looking cycles-ready renderer. So if you're keeping your end result is a render for inside of Blender, don't do any of this. Let it keep all of the complexity itself. Have 9 or 10 different materials on each thing in there. No issue involved with that at all. So anyways, that is really simply creating really cool looking anime characters in just a few minutes using VRoid Studio, Blender, and the Godot game engine. Let me know what you thought. I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.